Hello everybody, welcome to another Hands-On with me, Christian Scheller. This is actually Hands-On with a piece of developer technology every week, sort of late afternoon Central European time, running half an hour earlier today for some other reasons. I take a look at a piece of technology aimed at developers, and today is no different. We'll get to that in a minute. If you enjoy what you see, you can find more at christianscheller.com. You can also find a lot of my other videos, my gaming videos, and a whole bunch of other things. Leave a comment, say hi. Always nice to hear from you before or afterwards. And I've been getting a lot of really nice comments from people recently. Actually, the DuckDuckGo video from a couple of weeks ago, which just goes to show it takes a little bit of time for people to find them. I've been getting some really nice comments, people thanking me for making something that no one else is making, which is nice, and I find hard to believe, but still nice to hear. But today I'm going to be looking at codespaces from GitHub. The GitHub logo is hidden behind my shoulder, but it's over there somewhere. Trust me. It's a currently private beta feature, and then I got accepted into the feature. I think it's a beta feature anyway. Maybe not. It was anyway. Maybe it's not anymore. What is it? Well, that's what we're here to take a look at. So let's jump into a screen share. Cool. Blazingly fast cloud developer environments. Visual Studio Code backed by high performance VMs that start in seconds. What does this mean? Well, you can sort of see here. I like the fact that they're showing Safari, I think, here as well. I don't know if that's intentional or not. If they're detecting what I am visiting the webpage through. Now, of course, Visual Studio Code is Microsoft. GitHub is now Microsoft. Azure is now Microsoft, which I assume is where these are running. So you start to get these products starting to coalesce together very well. I have actually had an interview with Gitpod on one of my other streams a year or so ago who do something similar. There's other companies doing something similar as well. But I think those pairing of those tools that people are familiar with makes this a very compelling feature for those of you who want to just kind of get test environments, developer environments, working without having to install things on the road, getting new team members, lean clients, etc., etc. There's a whole bunch of reasons you might want to do this. It's not something I'm super keen on. I must admit, as people who have watched many of my streams before know, I like to do everything kind of the old-fashioned way in a browser, but whatever. I was interested in taking a look. So let's have a look. I mean, it looks pretty familiar. Everyone here knows I use VS Code, so this is pretty familiar to me. Full power of Visual Studio Code, all these browsers, faster than your laptop, maybe. Although interestingly, I'm currently running on an M1 Mac, and sometimes I have some issues with that, thanks to the architecture. So it's a quick way to do some development on an Intel machine, maybe. Standardized dev environments, we'll have a look at in a minute, this dev container.json. Browser previews and port forwarding, tab spaces, blah, 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 blah. I mean, a whole bunch of plugins. We'll test some of those plugins in a minute, actually. I actually maintain a couple of Visual Studio Code plugins, so we'll see if they work. And more, pay as you go. I'm a little bit worried about the costs here. We'll see. Hopefully I can do this without getting stung or anything too much. I'm interested here, desktop or browser is weird. So you can actually do it two different ways. You can have VS Code and then connect to the code space, or you can have the browser one where everything is in the browser. So maybe we'll try both. Wondering what to try first. We should probably try the Visual Studio Code one first. Makes a bit more sense. I'll open up a good test project. So that's the project we're going to use. You might have seen this on the stream before. It's a React application. It looks like I was messing around with Rollbar at some point with it. I should probably remove that. Also, I've messed around with Towery with it before. I've obviously, anyone who's watched these videos before, you can see that I've used it quite a few times to mess around with. So maybe we should reset it somewhat. I honestly can't remember what state I left it in last time I messed around with it. So it's this one. Yeah, we can see quite a lot of changes here. I think we can probably just reset back to the last time I ran any actually meaningful updates, which is a while ago. This was a project I made some time ago. I think we can just discard changes. Cool. Good. All right. I won't really run it for now. Doesn't really matter. We'll get to see that in a minute. So let's try it with the desktop first. Pretty much everything we would expect here. Get started. I wonder if this will take us to a different documentation page. I would think so. No, it takes us to the same one as if you picked the browser, but okay. Overview. What is a code space? I think we get the idea here. This shows us some of what we're just talking about, the browser or the desktop to this hosting here, unsurprisingly on Azure. Yeah, okay. Well, I think we want to go for the... Actually, there's a template repository. I'm going to stick with my own for now. More potential problems. I want to do the Visual Studio Code one, not the browser one. So I wonder how we do that. This is taking us right to the browser version. I'd rather try the other one first. I think from memory, to be honest with you, I have seen this. It's odd that it's not very immediately clear how to do that. Interesting that I'm not really getting any instructions on how to do that, unless I'm missing something. But I think I can just open VS Code, and from memory, there is an extension, which I may already have. No, I don't have it. So this extension, okay, that was done. So this might be what we want here. No, it's the same documentation again. Okay. Well, probably a good starting point. I do remember that this icon down here is generally the remote kind of work somewhere remote button in Visual Studio Code. So we could just try that. That doesn't seem to be doing quite what we want. Let's try codespaces. Here we go. Sign in. Yep. 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 Okay. So we did something. Okay. So now we get a whole bunch of options here. I will zoom in a bit because they're kind of hard to see. Change machine type, connect, create, delete, details, export, etc., etc. Well, we want to create a new code space. We don't have one yet, so let's do that. Loading your repositories. So I guess we need to attach it to the repository. And this is where I need to remember what I called this one. Create a new code space. So we know it's that. And it's interesting, I then also get other people's repositories, which is kind of weird. This is something I remember from trying something similar before. It might have been codespaces, it might have been Gitpod, it might have been when I was testing using Visual Studio Code in Windows with WSL. But yeah, you get taken into a different window. This window behind is now not connected to anything. I guess there's probably a way to change a preference there because that is kind of annoying, but I feel like there's probably a preference to change that. Okay, so here we have a whole bunch of things going on. We can see the terminal, but this is not our terminal. This is here. And there's an exclamation mark here, so we'll have a look at what that means in a minute. And we could see that we're connected to the code space, and yeah, there's some things here to look at. This still seems to be running, which is interesting. Let's have a look at this. Okay, this just seems to be somewhat normal. Cannot activate the live share audio extension because it depends on the live share extension. I think these are problems with trying to install extensions on the remote, maybe? I mean, I don't have live share enabled. I don't really want it enabled right now. Although Could be interesting if anyone is watching live. We could do some coding together. So I'll probably ignore that. HackMD one is weird. I definitely have that extension. Kind of a little bit unclear of what's going on now. I think basically just I am not running on my machine, basically, is the general principle here. I wonder if there's kind of quick, easy ways to prove this. So actually we have no dependencies installed here, you can see. It may be worth proving some of this to ourselves. Yeah, so here it is in a different window. So we can see here, these are different locations because here we have node modules installed, the dependencies. Oh, and a minute ago it wasn't installed here. It is now, but it wasn't a moment ago. I mean, we could prove this by, if I delete here, nothing changes here because this is not the machine. And if I deleted it and did it again, then it takes a bit longer, as we can see. It's interesting that it says faster than your machine, but it's probably because I'm doing it free, I guess. Install dependencies again. And also we can see this is not my terminal. And you can see my username there. And if I was to show you my terminal, which is familiar to a lot of viewers, with the koala and everything, it's not the same terminal. So it kind of proves that we are in a different place. This is all very well and good. I mean, this is useful, I guess, for especially experimenting with different versions of Node and languages and things like that, because it's very easy to get completely, utterly confused with all these different versions of JavaScript and Python and et cetera, et cetera. So it's one quick way just to have a kind of throwaway environment elsewhere without dirtying your local machine with conflicts, I suppose. I wonder what else we have as an option. Configuration files, change machine type. Could be interesting to take a look at. It doesn't look like we can change anything. I guess because I'm not paying, which is reasonable. Details, export logs, kill the host, open in codespace, open in browser, rebuild the container, report issues, etc. Open in browser. That would open the browser version. Okay. I'm interested to see what else we can do here. I'm wondering where these extensions are running. It's actually a very easy way to prove this because, for example, this is an extension that I use quite a lot. I actually help maintain the VS Code extension for Veil, but Veil relies on a Go binary, and this is obviously not installed. That is something that would be good to try and figure out how to do that. Whereas if I open up my locally hosted version, that should, he says, work. Yes, and it does work. It's a Veil error. So that is again showing that this is not running on this machine. Let's run it. Yeah, that's weird. This is still running locally by the looks of it. I wasn't expecting that to run locally. So maybe that's that. I don't think so. I also can see this thing here, ports. Local address, private. What are these different links? We have no tooltip. Oh, copy local address. I like all this sort of debug information I'm getting here, but I kind of thought this would mean it wouldn't be hosted on my machine. Is it hosted on my machine? Maybe I'm just getting tricked here. There's one way to check. Look for running instances of Node. Yeah, there is here. So I'm assuming if I quit that, no, I started again. So it's kind of hard to prove. And it's still working. So maybe it is running remotely. It just feels weird to have a local host address. I think it's also just come back again. So it's also very hard to tell. Maybe there's a way to configure that. Let's stop it for now. I guess I can just terminate that from there. Yep. So that shouldn't be working anymore. Yep. Let's now look at the same thing in the browser and see what we get. And then I'm going to look into some of the configuration and some of the extensions aspects. This is also interesting because I'm also getting the extensions I had locally, which is interesting. I don't exactly know how it got those. It's almost a bit disconcerting. It's got all my extensions from somewhere, but there's no configuration file or anything. It's a bit too magical in some respects. I mean, something like Kubernetes, I can't imagine that would work. Guessing this is coming from the same place, I would assume here if I delete this, that it stays in sync here. Yes, it did. That's quite cool. So we would need to install these again. I could open up this. I'm going to get a lot of the same errors. The rendering is not quite as crisp here because I'm zoomed in. Can't find Veil. Yeah, that's expected. All the other extensions are working because they use an NPM module which can just be installed, which has always been a bit of a problem, I suppose. Fetching data. So this is now opening up some TypeScript data in the background. I'm getting a lot of other things here that I don't have on my local. Oh no, I do. I've just never noticed it before. There we go. They all have existed before. I also have Copilot here as well, which is interesting. Watch one of my previous videos on that. It's all pretty reasonable. I mean, there's nothing much here that you wouldn't expect, really. It's working exactly how you expect. I really love the fact that I'm going to make obviously a completely meaningless change here. And I can jump back and yeah, very, very quickly, it's synced again. So this is good for collaboration as well. Before I can even flip back, it's done it. Let's run the application. Let's see what happens in this case. So it's local again, so that must be some kind of masked thing. One last thing we should actually do is see how you access it from within GitHub itself. This is the one we already have. Is this creating a new one? Yes, I guess so. Yeah, it creates a new one. So I guess this is one way to do configuration. Let's have a look through the guides first. So we've mostly done all of this. Committing and pushing changes, yep. Personalizing with extensions, we already kind of saw that. Changes you make to your editor setup in the current codespace. This is where it gets a little confusing to me. Okay, changes you make to your editor setup in the current codespace, such as theme and keyboard bindings, are synced automatically via settings sync, okay, to any other codespaces you open in any instances of Visual Studio Code. I guess I would want that to be a bit more finessed. I might not want everything everywhere. I assume there's probably a way to change that. Let's have a look at configuration and extensions. I saw this config file. We haven't really seen anything about that yet. Here are some of the extra things we can do. A devcontainer.json file. So primary file and devcontainer configuration is the devcontainer.json file. You can use this file to determine the environment of codespaces created for your repository. Okay, so yeah, so we could configure, I guess, extensions. So I could have a codespace devcontainer.json, let's say that, for my writing setups, for my coding setups, etc., I suppose. I wonder if we can create one of these from here. Dev container configuration. So we haven't actually created one yet. I wonder where I create them. So I guess I'd have to create one in the repository. Add development container configuration files. And we want Node.js and TypeScript. Huh, interesting. Sure, let's have Fish Shell. Let's have GitHub CLI. Let's have Homebrew. That's a bit weird. Yeah, I mean, I think that will do. Okay. Something's connecting here. Can I? It's going to take a minute. Just interested to see what the contents of the file are, really. So there is the dev container file. Do I have to commit that? I assume so. My very nice shouty commit message. Set that up again. So assume now we can pick, that's weird though, because we don't see the default one anymore. So it's sort of odd, but okay, we can change a region. Sounds good. For core, sure. I guess that's all I get access to. And we create a new code space. So I wonder how it's going to get complicated if I want to switch. This is now back with our new dev container. We have far less extensions, I guess, so this is definitely a different environment. I don't think there's much more. It's a relatively straightforward feature. So we've looked at changing customizations. There's not so much you can actually do right now. We've looked at different dev container setups. We've looked at how they connect to things. This is, so it's github.com/features/codespaces is what you're looking for. And we looked at a lot of these. Unlocks the full power of Visual Studio Code. Not completely true, because some extensions won't work, but most of it. I see these options here. I don't see them. I'm guessing it's my plan. That's fine. We looked at some of these dev environments. Again, it did not really work how we expected, but it worked. Port forwarding and things. Themes, tabs, etc., extensions that work. I need to make sure I turn them all off though, so I don't start getting charged. This is the interesting thing you have to remember. This is probably one of the big negatives to remember, is to turn it off when you're not using it. Yeah. Suddenly your developer environment to charge you even when no one's doing any development work. Cool feature, some limitations, obviously, but for a lot of web developers, they're not really limitations. I think the only two things for me are Veil and Pandoc, and these are not really web developer extensions at all, so that's fine, I guess. I don't know if I really have a use case, personally. It's cool, I like it. I like the flexibility. I like the fact I can just sort of throw things away and maybe have a place for people to collaborate together without having to worry about installing dependencies on each other's machines and having all those problems you often get. But for my own day-to-day use case, I'm not completely sure. I think if there were options around like the ability to run it on Windows or something, maybe that would be a reason to try. Although with web development, that's less important again. Again, the use cases there are probably going to be languages that I think it supports. Like I saw things there for C++ and stuff like that. I should maybe try something like Flutter or something and see what happens. But it's an interesting use case. It's cool. It works very well for the most part, with a few weird foibles here and there, a few weird bugs here and there. But would I use it? I'm not sure yet. Would you use it? Let me know in the comments, what would your use cases for codespaces be? Either in Visual Studio Code or in the browser. What would you use it for? Let me know in the comments. Interested to hear how teams are using it. They claim lots of teams are using it. How are you using it? Let me know. Always nice to hear some post feedback and see what people are doing with what they've learned. So I hope you enjoyed that. That was hands-on for this week. You can find more at christianschiller.com. You can also subscribe to any of my videos where you're watching them in multiple places. Leave a comment, say hi. I have been Christian Schiller. This has been Hands On. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. Take care.